I never thought a simple favor for my best friend would shatter my life in the most unexpected way. The day I pulled up to Jake Thompson's family home with my toolbox in the trunk of my old Honda, ready to spend the next few weeks helping renovate the place, I was just looking to be a good friend and maybe escape my own empty apartment for a while. But the moment his father David opened the door and our eyes met for the first time, something inside me shifted, and I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The house sat on a quiet street in the suburbs outside Portland, Oregon. One of those older two-story homes with character but years of wear. Jake had inherited the project after his parents' divorce, and he had called me in a panic a week earlier. "Dude, I need help. Dad's doing most of it, but the kitchen and upstairs bathroom are disasters. You're the only one I trust with this stuff." I had laughed it off at the time, agreeing because Jake had been my closest friend since college. We had shared everything from late-night study sessions to breakups and career doubts. Helping him now felt like the least I could do. David Thompson stood in the doorway, wiping his hands on a worn rag. At 52, he carried himself with the quiet strength of a man who had spent decades in construction. Tall, broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair that caught the afternoon light and deep lines around his eyes that spoke of both hard work and recent pain. His handshake was firm, his smile genuine but guarded. "Lance, right? Jake's told me a lot about you. Appreciate you coming out here. This old place is fighting us every step of the way." His voice had a low, steady timbre that settled something in my chest I did not yet understand. We started that first afternoon tearing out the outdated kitchen cabinets. Jake was there for a couple of hours before he had to run to a meeting at his job site across town. "You two got this," he said with a grin, clapping his dad on the shoulder. "Dad's the pro. Just don't let him boss you around too much." Then he was gone, leaving David and me alone in the dust-filled space. As we worked side by side, David kept the conversation light at first. He asked about my graphic design job in the city, about how I knew Jake, and whether I missed the small-town feel after moving to Portland. I answered honestly, telling him how the quiet of the suburbs sometimes called to me after long weeks of deadlines and noisy neighbors. He nodded thoughtfully, prying up a stubborn cabinet with a crowbar. "I get that. After the divorce, this house felt too big and too empty. Renovating it gives me something to focus on besides what went wrong." There was a vulnerability in the way he said it that made me pause. Most men his age I knew hid their struggles behind jokes or silence. David did not. He spoke plainly, without self-pity, about how his marriage to Jake's mother had slowly unraveled over years of unspoken resentments and different paths in life. "We stayed together for Jake longer than we probably should have," he admitted, handing me a bottle of water during a break. "Now he's grown, and I'm figuring out who I am without the label of husband." I found myself opening up in return, sharing how my last relationship had ended because my ex could not handle the pressure of family expectations back home in a conservative Midwest town. "Some people never really accept who you are," I said quietly, measuring a new piece of plywood. David looked at me then, really looked, and for a second the air between us felt thicker than the sawdust floating in the sunlight. "Yeah," he replied softly. "Some truths are harder to face than others." By the end of that first day, my arms ached and my clothes were covered in grime, but I felt more alive than I had in months. David insisted on feeding me dinner, simple grilled chicken and vegetables on the back patio as the Oregon evening cooled. We talked about everything and nothing. Books we both loved, favorite hiking trails in the Columbia Gorge, the challenges of building a life that felt authentic. When I finally drove home that night, the radio off and the windows down, I could not stop replaying the way his laugh had filled the kitchen, or how his eyes had lingered just a moment too long when he said goodbye. It was innocent, I told myself, just two guys bonding over hard work. But deep down, a small voice whispered that something had begun, and ignoring it would not make it go away. The next morning I was back early, coffee in hand, ready to keep helping. Jake texted that he would be tied up most of the week, leaving David and me to tackle the bulk of the demo. I did not mind. In fact, part of me looked forward to it more than I cared to admit. As the days passed, the physical labor brought a rhythm to our time together. We ripped out old flooring, patched walls, and hauled debris to the dumpster. David taught me tricks of the trade, patient and encouraging when I made mistakes. In return, I handled the design sketches for the new kitchen layout, showing him options on my laptop during lunch breaks. He appreciated the modern touches I suggested, things that would make the house feel fresh without losing its character. "You've got a good eye, Lance," he said one afternoon, studying my drawings. "Makes me wonder what else you're good at seeing that other people miss." The comment hung between us, loaded with meaning I was not ready to unpack. That night, alone in my apartment, I lay awake thinking about David. The way his shirt stretched across his shoulders when he lifted heavy beams. The quiet steadiness in his voice when he talked about starting over. The loneliness I recognized in his eyes because I carried some of my own. I told myself it was admiration, gratitude for his kindness. But the truth was more complicated, and it scared me. Jake was my best friend. David was his father. Crossing any line would destroy everything. Still, when I arrived the next morning and David greeted me with a fresh cup of coffee exactly how I liked it, I felt that pull again, stronger this time. The renovation was supposed to fix up an old house. Instead, it was quietly tearing down walls inside me I had not even known were there. And as we worked through another long day, laughing over a dropped hammer and sharing stories from our pasts, I began to wonder how long I could pretend this was still just about helping a friend. The second week brought heavier rain to Portland, forcing us indoors more often and giving David and me even more time alone. Jake called to apologize for his absence, explaining a big project at work had him pulling overtime. "You and Dad seem to be crushing it though," he said cheerfully over the phone. "Keep it up, man. I owe you big time." I assured him it was no problem, but guilt twisted in my gut even as I said the words. Because the truth was, I looked forward to those hours with David more than I should. We moved on to the upstairs bathroom, a complete gut job that required careful demolition and planning. David showed me how to check for water damage behind the old tile, his hands steady as he pointed out problem spots. Up close like that, I noticed details I had missed before. The faint scar on his forearm from an old job site accident, the way his hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck when damp with sweat. He caught me looking once and smiled, a knowing curve of his lips that made my face heat. "Everything okay?" he asked. I nodded quickly and went back to prying up floorboards, heart hammering. During lunch breaks we sat on the back porch, rain pattering on the roof overhead. David opened up more about the divorce. His ex-wife, Jake's mother, had moved to Seattle to be closer to her sister. The split had been amicable on the surface but painful underneath. "We stopped really seeing each other years ago," he confessed, staring out at the wet garden. "I threw myself into work, into being a dad. But after Jake moved out, I realized I had no idea what I wanted for myself anymore." I shared my own story then, about coming out to my family back in Illinois and the strained holidays that followed. "They love me, but they don't understand me," I said. "It makes every relationship feel like it comes with an expiration date." David listened without judgment, his presence solid and reassuring. When he reached over and squeezed my shoulder briefly, the touch lingered in my mind long after his hand dropped away. One evening after a particularly exhausting day of installing new subfloor, David suggested we order pizza and watch a game. We ended up on the couch in the living room, the only space not covered in drop cloths. The conversation drifted from sports to movies to deeper topics. He asked about my dating life, and I admitted it had been quiet lately. "Hard to find someone who gets the whole package," I said. "The career, the family stuff, the fact that I'm not interested in casual anymore." David nodded slowly. "I know what you mean. At my age, people assume you want the same things you did in your 20s. But life teaches you different lessons." He paused, then added quietly, Sometimes you meet someone who makes you question everything you thought you knew about yourself. His eyes met mine across the dim room, and the air felt charged. Neither of us looked away for a long moment. I left that night with my thoughts spinning. Back in my apartment, I paced the floor, arguing with myself. This was dangerous. Jake would be devastated if he knew the direction my mind was taking. David was twice my age, my best friend's father, and probably straight. Or was he? The way he looked at me suggested otherwise, but admitting that opened a door I was terrified to walk through. The next morning I arrived determined to keep things professional. But David greeted me with that same warm smile and a fresh pot of coffee, and my resolve crumbled a little more. We spent the day painting the bathroom walls a soft gray that I had chosen. The repetitive motion and the smell of fresh paint created a calm rhythm. David hummed along to an old rock station on the radio, and soon I was singing along too. Laughter came easily between us now, the kind that made the work feel less like labor and more like shared time. When we finished the first coat and stepped back to admire it, David stood close enough that I could feel the heat from his body. "Looks good," he said, voice low. "Really good." I was not sure if he was talking about the paint. That evening, as I helped him clean the brushes, he told me about a hiking trip he had taken alone after the divorce. "Being out in the woods made me realize how much I had been hiding from myself," he said. "Not just about the marriage ending, but other things. Feelings I pushed down for years because they did not fit the life I was supposed to have." He did not elaborate, but the implication hung there. My pulse quickened. Was he saying what I thought he was saying? Before I could respond, Jake texted asking for updates. I showed David the message, and we both laughed at the timing. But the laughter felt strained on my end. The secret weight of what was growing between us pressed heavier. That night I barely slept, torn between the thrill of possibility and the fear of the damage it could cause. Helping with the renovation had started as a favor. Now it felt like the beginning of something that could either heal us both or break 3 lives apart. By the 3rd week, the kitchen was taking shape. New cabinets were installed, countertops measured, and the space began to feel like a home again instead of a construction zone. David and I worked with an easy synchronicity that surprised us both. He trusted my design instincts, and I respected his practical knowledge. The hours flew by in a blur of sawdust, laughter, and increasingly personal conversations. One rainy afternoon, we took a break in the half-finished kitchen. David pulled out an old photo album he had found while clearing the attic. We sat on the floor flipping through pages of Jake as a kid, David younger and smiling beside his then-wife. "I was so focused on providing that I missed a lot," he admitted, tracing a finger over a picture of himself holding baby Jake. "Missed parts of myself too." I asked gently what he meant. He was quiet for a long time before answering. "I always felt different, Lance. Attracted to men as well as women, but I buried it deep because of how I was raised. Family expectations, the job, the marriage. When things fell apart with Jake's mom, it all came rushing back. The what-ifs, the regrets." His voice cracked slightly on the last word. My heart ached for him. I reached out without thinking and placed my hand over his. The contact sent a spark through me. David looked up, eyes searching mine. "You're the first person I've told that to," he whispered. "Feels right somehow." In that moment, the walls I had built around my feelings crumbled. I told him I understood more than he knew, that I had felt the same pull since the first day. The confession hung between us, raw and honest. David did not pull away. Instead, he turned his hand palm up and laced his fingers with mine. "This is complicated," he said. "Jake, the age difference. People won't understand." I nodded, knowing he was right. But in the quiet of the empty house, with rain tapping on the windows, none of that seemed to matter as much as the warmth of his hand in mine. We did not kiss that day. The moment felt too fragile, too important to rush. Instead, we sat there talking for hours, sharing fears and hopes. David spoke of his worry that Jake would feel betrayed. I confessed my guilt about keeping this from my best friend. Yet beneath the worry ran a current of excitement, the sense that we had found something real in the middle of demolition and dust. When Jake stopped by unexpectedly that evening to check progress, the shift in atmosphere was immediate. David and I moved apart naturally, but I caught Jake glancing between us with a curious frown. "You two seem to be getting along great," he said lightly, but there was an edge to his tone. We showed him the finished bathroom and new kitchen layout. He was impressed, praising our work. Still, as he left, he pulled me aside. "Everything okay with Dad? He seems different lately, lighter." I assured him it was just the project lifting his spirits. The lie tasted bitter. That night I drove home replaying every glance, every touch. The emotional connection with David had deepened into something undeniable. I felt seen by him in a way no one else ever had. But the cost loomed large. Jake's trust, family ties, societal whispers in their tight-knit community where traditional values still held sway. Was I ready to pay that price? Was David? The next few days brought more progress on the renovation and more stolen moments of honesty. We worked hard during the day and lingered over dinner at night, talking about the future. David admitted he had started questioning his sexuality years earlier but never acted on it. "Meeting you made me stop running from it," he said one evening as we sat on the porch steps. His vulnerability moved me deeply. I told him I felt the same, that this connection challenged everything I thought I wanted. Yet the internal conflict grew. Every laugh we shared felt like a small betrayal of Jake. Every quiet admission brought me closer to David but farther from the uncomplicated friendship I had valued for years. The tension built slowly, like the steady rise of a storm on the horizon. We both knew a decision point was coming, but neither of us wanted to face it yet. For now, the renovation gave us an excuse to keep spending time together, to explore this new territory without naming it fully. The emotional dam finally broke during the 4th week. We were installing the new kitchen backsplash late one Friday night, working under bright work lights because Jake had promised to help over the weekend. David passed me a tile and our fingers brushed. The contact lingered. When I looked up, his expression had changed, the guarded look replaced by open longing. "Lance," he said, voice rough, "I can't keep pretending this is just friendship." Before I could respond, he stepped closer. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, then deeper as years of unspoken feelings poured out. It was not rushed or passionate in a dramatic sense. It was honest, filled with the weight of everything we had shared. When we pulled apart, both breathing hard, David rested his forehead against mine. "I don't know what comes next," he whispered, "but I know I don't want to lose this." I did not want to lose it either. In the weeks that followed, our relationship grew in secret. Stolen kisses in the half-finished rooms. Long talks after work about what this meant for both of us. David was cautious, protective of Jake and of me. I wrestled daily with guilt. Every time Jake texted asking for photos of the progress, I felt like I was living a double life. The renovation became both a cover and a symbol of the changes happening inside us. We kept things careful. No public outings together beyond the house. David worried about his ex-wife finding out and using it against him in lingering divorce matters. I worried about how my own family and friends would react to the age gap and the connection to Jake. Yet in private, the bond strengthened. David shared dreams of traveling once the house was done. I showed him design projects I was passionate about. We supported each other through tough days, offering the kind of understanding that comes from truly seeing someone. Jake noticed the shift anyway. He started dropping by more often, his questions pointed. "You spending a lot of time here, Lance? Dad seems happier than I've seen him in years." I deflected as best I could, but the strain showed. One afternoon Jake found us laughing together over a silly mistake with the plumbing. His smile did not reach his eyes. Later he pulled me aside. "Look, I appreciate everything you're doing, but if there's something going on, you can tell me." I lied and said everything was fine. The betrayal sat heavy in my stomach. David and I talked about it that night. We have to be honest with him eventually, he said, pacing the living room. But the timing matters. This will hurt him. I agreed, but fear kept us silent a little longer. The moral conflict tore at me. Was love worth the pain it would cause my closest friend? Was I being selfish for wanting this happiness? David struggled too, questioning if his feelings were real or a reaction to his divorce. Despite the guilt, the relationship brought light into both our lives. David seemed younger, more energized. I felt grounded in a way I never had. The renovation progressed steadily toward completion, mirroring the way we were building something new between us. But cracks were forming in the foundation of secrecy. Jake's suspicion grew. Community gossip started when neighbors saw my car there so often. The pressure mounted, forcing us to confront the reality that secrets this big never stay hidden forever. The confrontation came suddenly in the 5th week. The house was nearly finished, the new kitchen gleaming and the bathroom modern and functional. Jake arrived unannounced one evening while David and I were sharing a quiet dinner in the dining room. He took one look at the scene, the easy familiarity between us, and his face hardened. What the hell is this? The argument that followed was raw and painful. Jake felt betrayed on every level. His best friend and his father. The two people he trusted most hiding something so huge. How long? He demanded, voice shaking. David tried to explain calmly, emphasizing that it had developed slowly and genuinely. I stood there, heartbreaking as I watched my friend's world crack. I came to you for help, Lance. Not this. His words cut deep. David took the brunt of Jake's anger, years of father-son dynamics mixing with the shock of the revelation. Jake accused him of taking advantage, of confusing loneliness with something real. David defended us quietly but firmly, admitting his feelings but refusing to let Jake paint it as manipulation. I tried to apologize, to explain the internal battle I had fought, but Jake was too hurt to hear it. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The days after were brutal. Jake stopped coming to the house. David received cold texts from his ex-wife after Jake told her. Whispers spread in their neighborhood about the young guy spending so much time with David Thompson. I faced my own isolation, questioning every choice. Was this love worth destroying a lifelong friendship? The age difference drew judgment from those who learned of it. Some called it inappropriate. Others questioned David's motives. The societal pressure weighed on us both, highlighting how far society still had to go in accepting different kinds of relationships. David and I leaned on each other through the storm. We talked late into the nights about right and wrong, about whether following our hearts justified the pain. He struggled with guilt over hurting his son. I wrestled with the fear that I had ruined my closest friendship forever. Yet in quiet moments we reaffirmed what we felt. This was not a fling. It was real connection built on respect, shared values, and mutual understanding. Still, the cost was undeniable. Jake's silence hurt most of all. A tense meeting followed where Jake agreed to talk. Emotions ran high. Accusations flew, followed by tears and reluctant listening. Jake admitted he had sensed something but dismissed it because the idea seemed impossible. David expressed his love for his son and his hope they could find a way forward. I stood in the middle, torn between two people I cared for deeply. The conversation ended without full resolution, but a fragile bridge formed. Jake needed time. We all did. The experience forced each of us to confront our deepest values. Family loyalty versus personal happiness. Societal norms versus authentic living. The drama revealed how interconnected our choices were and how one person's awakening could ripple through an entire family. The renovation finished in the final week. The house transformed into a warm, modern home that reflected both David's past and his hopes for the future. As we placed the last piece of trim, a quiet satisfaction settled over us. The project that had brought us together now stood complete, a testament to hard work and unexpected change. Jake eventually came around enough to see the finished house. The visit was awkward at first, but seeing the results of our labor softened him slightly. "You did good work," he told me stiffly. "Both of you." It was not forgiveness, but it was a start. Over the following months, conversations continued. Jake began to understand that our feelings were genuine and not a betrayal born of malice. David worked hard to rebuild trust with his son, attending family counseling and giving Jake space when needed. For David and me, the relationship continued to grow stronger amid the challenges. We faced external judgment together, learning to ignore the stares and comments. Internally, we both grew through the experience. I became more certain of what I wanted in life. David embraced his truth with courage. The age difference and family ties remained points of tension, but they also deepened our commitment to communicate openly. In the end, we chose to move forward together, not without scars, but with greater wisdom. Jake and I slowly rebuilt our friendship on new terms. The experience taught all of us about the complexity of love, the pain of secrets, and the courage required to live authentically. The house that started as a renovation project became a symbol of transformation for everyone involved. Was it wrong to pursue this love despite the hurt it caused my best friend and the challenges it brought to his family? Or was staying true to an honest connection the only right choice in a world full of difficult compromises?